This module serves as an introduction to the concepts of phishing, how it evolved, and why it is still so effective in hacking attempts carried out by various adversaries. We're going to take a look at what phishing is and why older and commonly used methods do not work anymore. I will then explain how multi-factor authentication made the world more secure and how it exactly works. Once we get the theory out of the way, I will demonstrate the weak points of multi-factor authentication and how they can be leveraged by reverse proxy phishing using my EvilJinx tool, which we will be mastering in the later modules of this course. Let's begin. What is phishing really? In its simplicity, it's nothing more than intentionally deceiving a person to expose their login credentials to another person through social engineering via any form of communication channel. Once the login credentials fall into the hands of an adversary, they can authenticate themselves as a target user and in effect gain access to confidential information they were not authorized to access. Over the last 20 years, most websites require just a combination of username and password to be able to authenticate the user. Phishing pages consisted mostly of login page lookalikes asking for username and password. Attackers could then reuse the captured credentials to log into targeted websites on behalf of the targeted user. This changed with the introduction of multi-factor authentication. Now, not only are users required to enter their username and password, but they need to provide another form of authentication. After providing a correct combination of username and password, user is required to provide a dynamically generated token provided through external devices the attacker should not have physical access to. A successful attacker able to steal the user's username and passwords will be unable to log into the device without providing an additional authentication token. Most often, such authentication token will arrive as a 6-digit number via an SMS or generated by a multi-factor authentication app on the legitimate user's mobile device. With the introduction of multi-factor authentication, the attackers had to up their game. Once they figured out that simple credential stealing login pages were not enough, they kept thinking about how they can hijack the user's session only after all credentials and tokens are entered by the phished user. This is how reverse proxy phishing was born. In the next section, we will take a look on how MFA works when implemented on websites and what are its flaws, which can be exploited. Multi-factor authentication was introduced with the sole purpose of making it harder for the attackers to authenticate themselves with stolen credentials. The idea behind it was that even in the circumstance when user's username and password is compromised, either through data theft or a successful phishing attempt, the adversary in possession of such credentials won't have access to the device used for generating one-time access tokens. And it makes sense. If the adversary learns your password, there is no chance the adversary will also be able to access your mobile phone to read your MFA tokens, which are short-lived and generated only once a login attempt is made. This would be game over for adversaries if it weren't for how modern web works. Once you sign into a website with your account credentials, website needs to maintain state of your authentication so that it doesn't have to ask you for your password every time you refresh the website. When you successfully log in, website will create a new session for your account, which will be identified by a unique identifier known only to the website server and your web browser. The session identifier, aka a session token, needs to be stored in your web browser and will be embedded within every request made to the server, which will allow the server to verify if you are authorized to view the requested content. The trick here is if the adversary was able to steal your session token and store it in their own web browser, the website will be unable to distinguish the adversary from you as a legitimate user. It will consider both parties as authenticated and will provide them access to the same account. This is how the web works, and it is not going to change anytime soon. In the next section, we will explore how an adversary can steal your session token through phishing using a reverse proxy adversary simulation software like EvilJinx. In previous sections, we've learned how websites authenticate the user and how MFA helps in securing the account from unauthorized access. Once the user successfully logs in, the session token is created and it acts as a key to the castle. The way how web browsers store session tokens will depend on how specific website handles authentication. There are two most common methods of storing session tokens by web browser: cookies and local storage. The majority of websites will store session tokens in form of browser cookies, but it is increasingly common to see web applications utilizing local storage for that as well. Nevertheless, which method is used by the website, EvilJinx Reverse Proxy now supports capturing session tokens through both. Reverse proxy phishing works a bit differently from common phishing. Common phishing would present a phished user with a static fake login page. Instead, reverse proxy phishing presents the phished user with an exact one-to-one copy of the real website, proxied dynamically in real time from the real website server. The phishing server running EvilJinx and controlled by an adversary sits in the middle, right between the phished user's browser and the server hosting the proxied website. All the outbound requests leaving the phished user's browser arrive at EvilJinx phishing server. Since the encrypted connection is established between the user's browser and the phishing server, all requests are then decrypted and analyzed by EvilJinx. EvilJinx will analyze the contents of the request and extract confidential information within, like usernames, passwords, and most importantly, session tokens. Once the requests are analyzed, the phishing server will forward them to respective website, establishing the connection with the website on behalf of the phished user. When responses come back from the target website, they will be decrypted and analyzed in the same manner as the requests coming from the phished user. Responses may contain session tokens which will be captured by EvilJinx to hijack the phished user's session. In the foreground, the phished user is likely to believe that the link they clicked redirected them to a legitimate website, which is asking them to log in. If the phished user has MFA enabled on the account, they will be presented with a legitimate MFA challenge. User will be asked for a one-time MFA token to complete the login process. At that time, they may receive a legitimate MFA token via SMS if that's the method they use for securing their account. This is all possible because they are indeed communicating with a legitimate website, with EvilJinx acting as a man in the middle, eavesdropping on the whole communication. By the time the phished user successfully logs into the website through the proxied connection, EvilJinx will have already captured the session token. The session token may come in form of several cookies or JSON values, and it is effectively the only thing needed for the adversary to completely take over the user's account. The adversary is now in complete control of the user's account, and as long as the user does not log out of the targeted website, thus invalidating the session token, adversary can use the hijacked account for as long as they see fit. You have now learned how reverse proxy phishing tool like EvilJinx can be used to successfully hijack even those accounts with MFA enabled. Armed with that knowledge, we are now ready to learn how to become an adversary and prepare our own phishing attacks using EvilJinx phishing framework. In this module, I'll guide you through the installation of all the necessary software that we'll need to set up EvilJinx to create our phishing campaigns. So for the sake of this course, we'll be mainly focusing on Windows 10, but if you happen to be on Linux, you can just easily follow along without any problems. I will be showing you what software I use to create phishlets, where to get it from, and how to set up and run EvilJinx locally for the first time. Without further ado, let's jump right in. So, the first thing we'll need is obviously a web browser. We'll be using Google Chrome because it is the most popular one. You probably already have it installed. I will not be showing you how to install Google Chrome because it is fairly easy, as you may expect. The first thing though that we want to do is create a new user, a new profile in Google Chrome. This will come in handy when we try to create our own fishlets and we want a new profile where we'll be deleting cookies in, because we'll be deleting the cookies in the profile very often for testing. So this is the first thing that we will want to do. So let's create a new profile, which will be just default color, and we will name it Evil Jinx. We'll also set up some custom profile image so that we do not get confused between when changing the profile. So okay, we can see this is our Evil Jinx profile. Great. Now we will need extensions that we will be using. So the first extension that we want is edit this cookie extension. Let's type it in Google. Let's change it to all the default settings, and here it is. So we find edit this cookie in the Google Chrome store, and we just click add to Chrome. Easy as this, add extension. So this extension, actually, we can also click this small extensions icon and pick this small pin icon so that we can have it pinned on the Google bookmark tab, or whatever you call it, essentially. This allows us to view all of the cookies that are currently being used on this website. This will come very handy when creating our own fishlets for any targeted website. So the next thing is we will want to get the local storage manager extension. This is also available on the Google Chrome store, and this is how it looks like. We do the same thing. We add the extension. We pin it as well with this clicking this small pin icon. And this extension actually will help us in injecting authentication tokens into the local storage, because some of the applications do not use cookies for authentication. They will save the authentication tokens inside of the local storage. So with this out of the way, the next thing we need is we will actually bookmark the privacy tab from the settings, because it will also come in handy. So we open this, click this burger icon, then click settings and open privacy and security. And yeah, this is essentially the link. So now we can, I don't know if we can do it from here, but I know that you can press. Well, the first thing we'll do, we'll actually click the burger icon again, select bookmarks, and click show bookmarks tab. That way we never lose it, so it will just be there and wait for us. Then we click on the URL, this left icon, and just move the bookmark onto this. So this is very handy, because every time now we click the settings privacy, we will get into this setting. And this is the place we will be using the most. It's the clear browsing data. So when you click it, you actually should select the advanced. Then for the time range, you select all time, and make sure to just select everything, because we will be wanting to purge all of the configuration, all the data, storage, cache, cookies, everything when we want to retest our fishlets. So the next thing, we want to install Visual Studio Code. This is actually a great IDE that we will be using for editing, creating our fishlets.